Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking Charlotte, MLS wrap-up, Pharma Bro, Reyna, Garber, Mosse Stardom, Brazil, Tuchel, Dead Poets, Vela, Hope, Herrera, Liga MX, Marsch, Boeing, and so much more. But first joining me, as always, the aforementioned David Mosse, my colleague and my guiding light. He is a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Monday, March 7th in the year 2022?
Doing well after a hectic weekend in which we covered an MLS game Saturday in Charlotte and then another one Sunday in Los Angeles.
Yeah, we hightailed it home and got ready to do a game last night. So, yeah, it was a fun-filled week. We'll talk about those games and some of the stuff that happened. Did you watch anything interesting, my friend?
Well, I'm actually way behind on my TV watching because I was working this weekend.
Okay.
So I need to get caught up over the next couple of nights. I've fallen behind on Maisel. I've fallen behind on Killing Eve. I didn't get to watch the premiere of this HBO show Winning Time on the start of the Lakers dynasty, which I do want to watch.
Yes.
Tonight, we're taping this on a Monday morning. I've got My Brilliant Friend. I've got The Gilded Age, so lots for me to watch this week.
You out there. I got a couple of recommendations. One, I think it came out last year, but I'm just watching it now because I think it's on Netflix now, called Pharma Bro, about the Martin Shkreli dude, the dude that remember the story that came out where he raised the prices on drugs, and it was he was rightfully vilified and took a lot of crap. But as is the case in a lot of these stories, there's a whole lot more to the story that makes it that much more interesting. So recommend that one. And then the other one, Downfall, the case against Boeing. I think that's also on Netflix. You remember the horrible accidents of the 737 MAX, the new airplane that Boeing had put out. And, we understand that there is inherent risk involved in aviation, and that's how things get done, and that's how progress is made. But this shows the behind the scenes problems and the shortcuts and the deadly decisions that were made that led to these accidents that shouldn't happen. It's a fascinating look into the entire industry and the aviation industry, but in particular Boeing and the way that they go about putting these heaps of metal in the sky that we take on a consistent basis. So both of those are very, very good. Anything else you want to hit here before we jump right into the show?
No, let's do it.
Let's do it, because I think it's important for us to start out in Charlotte, like you mentioned. That was fun. You were on the road with me, and we don't always do that. And so it was fun to have you out there, not just for the work, but also the fun that was had. We had a real late night on Saturday night in Charlotte. For the people that didn't watch the game or don't know about the game, Charlotte, the newest Major League Soccer team, this was their first home game in their MLS history, and they blew it out. 75,000 people in the stadium there. It's the same stadium that the Panthers of Carolina play, right?
Correct.
So just the sheer size made it not just a spectacle, but a historic moment. The biggest crowd in Major League Soccer history. The biggest crowd of the weekend in the world, and just a great moment, not just for this brand new organization, but for the sport. Before we get to the game, just in general, your thoughts on seeing something like this up close.
Oh, it was incredible. Hats off to that city. They did a great job. So they go into the history books, as you mentioned, highest attendance in MLS history. You and Stu Holden had an interesting, I wouldn't call it a debate in the pregame, but an exchange about to what degree do results matter for Charlotte right now? Is it just about the excitement of having an MLS team and this first season is kind of they get a pass, or no? At what point will they need to show these fans something so that the enthusiasm doesn't die down?
Yeah, so it was interesting to first off just see the setting, and we all know that there was a lot of people there that maybe they've never been to a soccer game or not necessarily into soccer, because there was a curiosity factor and it was the place to be in Charlotte. We get that, but I thought it was a much more educated crowd than we have had in the past. To your point, you need a team, and we said this from start to finish, you need a team that whether they win or lose, you want to come back and you had a good time. And I think a lot of people left there, even though we didn't get that moment, it needed a goal from the home team. Even if the team lost, even if it ended up being 1-1, it needed a goal from the home team. They didn't get that moment to really celebrate and see what that could be. There was an interesting moment during the national anthem where the national anthem singer's microphone crapped out. And everybody in the stadium, and that's 75,000 people, helped her out. And it was a cool little unrehearsed type of moment. And then they went on to see a game that's not going to be put into a time capsule in terms of how it was played and the entertainment factor. But this is the start of something special. And I think, I talked to Don Garber at halftime, and we have our best intentions, right, and best laid plans. But it's very difficult to predict what ultimately is going to happen. And I know this is the first game, and it's going to dissipate in terms of the numbers, and that's okay. But this was a hell of a start for a really, really interesting team. Before we get going, let's circle back to the entire experience, because driving to the stadium's right downtown, so it's this urban feel, which is wonderful, and people are walking. There's parties going on, there's beer gardens going on, people in the streets and dancing and music, and everybody in their Charlotte garb and all that kind of stuff. So that was great to see that colorful aspect of fandom and what it can be. And then after the game, everybody goes out and the bars are packed and the restaurants are packed, and it's a real celebration. And that's what is the next level. It's not just the experience within those 2 hours that you were in the stadium. It's what you do beforehand. It's what you do during the game. And then it's what you do after. And obviously being downtown, it lends itself to that. But it was crazy. You would walk the streets and you would see the blue everywhere you went of Charlotte. And then after the game, we couldn't even get a drink at our own hotel bar because it was so crazy there. And we actually had to find someplace else to get something. And this is where I will tell this story. Oftentimes you'll ask me about the feedback that I'm getting on the road from people that watch this and listen to this. I'm here to tell you that Mosse is a star, whether he wants to be or not. He may be a reluctant star, but he is a star. The people want what they want, right? And they want Mosse, so much so that we went into the bar after the game and had some drinks with the crew, and everybody was there. Our good friend Heather O'Reilly dropped by with her friends, and it was just a fun night of celebrating this incredible event. But there was also a lot of soccer fans around there, and it warmed the cockles of my redheaded heart to see you at one point taking pictures with your adoring fans out there. I think we have one of those pictures actually to show for people that are actually watching it as opposed to listening to the podcast. He's taking selfies with people. He's having conversations, because I was talking to someone and I mentioned there's Mosse over there, and that was it. They did not want to talk to me anymore. This gentleman over here was so excited to talk to the great David Mosse, and he was not alone out there. So you are a big star, my friend. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Now, I hope you'll still, hang with us mere mortals, despite your stardom.
Yeah, this was a fascinating guy. He was telling me stories about hanging out with Pele in the late 70s. So obviously that got my attention. But yeah, no, it was the people there were super nice. As you mentioned, Heather O'Reilly showed up. So we could discuss our Carly Lloyd interview with her. She had some interesting thoughts on that. That was great. But this was Saturday night. Can we harken back to Friday for 1 second? Because I arrived in Charlotte at 5 p.m. on Friday. I had been told there was going to be this big group dinner. And at the last minute, I was informed that you guys were, in fact, hanging out with Don Garber and a bunch of MLS executives, and that I was not invited to that. And Garber, by the way, must have buttered you up that night, because that interview you did at halftime, I haven't seen that many softballs since the days of Eddie Feiner.
It was so a peek behind the curtain when it comes to those interviews. You're right. We did talk to him the night before, and then I talked to him at halftime. Well, first off, there's a million different questions, and if you were in my seat or others were in your seat, you may think, "Oh, I would have asked this." First off, there's time restraints, so you can only do what you can do. Don Garber, like anybody else, is very adept at handling questions, even questions that he doesn't necessarily want to answer, and will be able to pivot and do all that kind of stuff. There really wasn't a whole lot of breaking news going on when it comes to Major League Soccer. In this case, Yeah, I mean, I didn't have the time to go in depth, and I didn't have the inclination to go really into depth. This was a celebration, and there will be other times where it's much more of a hold his feet to the fire type of situation. But this wasn't it. He talked about St. Louis coming next year. He talked about, his excitement about what Major League Soccer is and how it's going to be involved in the World Cup and all of those types of things. We talk a little bit beforehand, so he's not blindsided. I'm not there to do any type of gotcha type of situation in an interview like that. But, you ask things that you think the most people would want to know about. And that's what we did. But it was fun. It was fun before the game. The work during the game was fun, and obviously the work after the game.
Now, as for the game itself,
yes,
I've been touting this Charlotte manager, Miguel Angel Ramirez. I've even gone as far as to call him the next Pep Guardiola. And from what you've seen so far, other than the fact that they're both bald, you don't see a lot of resemblances. You haven't been too impressed so far.
Right. And so the way that he talks, the way that he dresses, the way that he acts, there's an obvious fan club. And he's not alone, by the way. And if you're going to emulate somebody, it's pretty good to emulate Pep. But he's also coaching at a very, very different league for a brand new team that's now 2 games old. I thought he was outcoached, to be quite honest. And it's maybe to be expected because he's still learning not just Major League Soccer, but learning his craft. I thought Greg Vanney, in the way that he's set up, should not have been a surprise to him or anybody else. And they got thoroughly outnumbered, especially with that at times 5 in the back covering 2 players. I'm talking about Charlotte right now. So he will learn. This is not a horrible Charlotte team, but this is certainly not an elite team. They're going to struggle just to make the playoffs. They create very, very little up top, and they created very, very little up top when it came to the game against Los Angeles. But if you're going to lose a game, whether it's the coach and how he views it or how the team ultimately views it, lose it on a banger. And that's exactly what happened with a friend Alvarez. He hits a left foot shot that goes into the upper 90. Nobody's saving it. And it came after most of the opportunities falling to a Los Angeles Galaxy team that is not great, but is certainly, I think, as to be expected, better than Charlotte at this point.
I was impressed by the Galaxy. I think they'll make the playoffs this season. Mark Delgado has been a nice addition in the midfield. I thought Douglas
He's moved
Costa,
to Mark, by the way, not Marky. He used to be Marky for a long time, and he's decided to become Mark.
I thought Douglas Costa showed some flashes in this game. Chicharito doing Chicharito things. So if they can keep their key players healthy, I do think that's a playoff team this season. I was relatively impressed by them.
Should we end it up here with regards to that game? Because, we try to tell stories on and off the field, and I think we do a good job. The story about Sasha Kleshin, player for the Los Angeles Galaxy, and Charlotte FC's Chris Heggart, was absolutely amazing. And for those that maybe didn't watch the game, this connection between these 2 players that they could not have necessarily anticipated. Was it 12 years ago that Chris had a cancer scare and they found a tumor, and Sasha Kleshin went and visited him in the hospital. And we had the pictures of him with this then very young and very sick young boy. Fast forward to 12 years later, and not only has he recovered and he's playing soccer, but at a certain point, they were both on the field for the respective teams in Major League Soccer. And it's just an amazing story. And it is part of a bigger story that is being told when it comes to the evolution of not just Major League Soccer, but soccer in the United States. But certainly when it comes to the impact that professional teams can have on a generation. I didn't grow up watching a tremendous amount of soccer and domestic soccer. And certainly not anything that I was tribal about or that I had a connection to. And yet we're seeing a generation now that grows up watching these players, watching these teams, having teams in their community and in their cities that they aspire to either be a part of on the field or be in the stands watching. And it becomes part of the fabric of their being from a very young age. And it's just wonderful to see, and it's going to happen more and more and more. So that was a really good story. All right, should we pop around to some other games around the league?
Yeah, so there's two teams in the East with perfect records so far, 2 wins out of 2, the Red Bulls and DC United. Now, DC United, the scheduling gods did them quite the favor. They've played Charlotte and Cincinnati in their first 2 games, so they've yet to concede a goal, but that's to be expected there. The Red Bulls have really impressed me.
Wait, you said there's 2 teams that are 2-0? Wait, what about Austin?
I said in the East.
Oh, okay, got it.
The Red Bulls, after beating San Jose 3-1 in the opening weekend, then followed it up with a 4-1 victory over Toronto. Lewis Morgan, we talked about all these intra-league moves. That one got kind of overshadowed. They acquired him from Inter Miami, but he gets a hat trick here. So the Red Bulls might have something going.
They do have something going. And look, this is a Toronto team that's in transition. We get that, but they went up to the Great White North and they opened a can of whoop ass. And it's not the sheer amount of goals. Obviously, the hat trick from Lewis Morgan is going to be, and rightfully looked at, but the way in which they scored their goals, the spaces, and from a TFC perspective, the problems that Bob Bradley and company are looking at right now. And again, early days, things could change, but this is a great win for the Red Bulls that we're constantly looking at and saying, well, is this a developmental team, or is this a young team that's really not going to develop into anything else, or is it just a bad team? I think that this is good. I still don't look at the Red Bulls as an elite team in Major League Soccer right now. What else? By the way, the field up there in Toronto was not good. Not that changed the score or would have had an effect on the score, but you're playing in Toronto in March.
I mean, I know this game was Sunday and Luis had it later on in the rundown, but why don't we hit on Austin since you mentioned it? 2 wins out of 2 for them, 10 goals in those 2 games. Again, the level of competition with Cincinnati and Inter Miami, but nevertheless, I like the way they're playing. This Sebastian Drusi off to an incredible start, 3 goals in 2 games. So Austin in year 2, could they really be ready to make a move here?
I mean, what? 10 goals in the first 2 games. They are worth the price of admission, and they are entertaining. I wish we could have traded for some of those goals in our game in Charlotte, because we could have used some of that. But yeah, this is good. Again, early days, and the competition that they are facing so far has not been of the highest standard. But look, this is the strange part of our league, and the wonderful part of our league. You can make all the predictions that you want, and inevitably, and even right off the bat, some of them will change. I mean, that Seattle is in last place right now after us talking them up, and I think rightfully so. This is so MLS, all the stuff that's going on.
To be fair with Seattle, heavily rotated squad. They had one eye on the CCL game, which we'll talk about in a minute, but no Rui Diaz, no Ladero, Jordan Morris, and Christian Roldan didn't start. They came on as subs. They lose 1-0 away to RSL. There was also some weather issues in this game. But as you mentioned, nevertheless, you look at the standings and you see Seattle at the bottom with 0 points from 2 games. It is somewhat surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different version but that, the PSG comparisons of trying to fit all of this talent together on the field and getting them to gel, this is Brian Schmetzer's job and his challenge. And he has at different times met challenges and been very, very successful. He's changed the way that they play. He's changed personnel. He's done it. He's done it all. And this is just another one of those. I don't think that this is a bridge too far for him. And I do think that while Seattle will, at times have bad games, and at times it won't quite gel. Unlike PSG, it's not just simply about winning the league. It's about ultimately getting to MLS Cup. And, this might be a situation where Seattle doesn't dominate, even though we all recognize their talent, in that they're fighting on multiple fronts. So they do what is needed to get done in order to get to the playoffs, and then that's where it finally comes together. But these are, again, Tata Martino champagne problems. So nobody is crying from Brian Schmetzer or Seattle because they have to fit all of this great talent on the field together. What else?
History made this weekend. New England beat Dallas 1-0. That means Bruce Arena surpasses Ziggy Schmidt as the all-time winningest manager in MLS history. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, he's a legend. And even without this record, he will go down as one of the great American coaches in history, in any sport. And should be celebrated and praised for this. And I think that he has done it in Major League Soccer, given all the unique challenges that this league throws at all managers. It says a lot about how good he actually is, and he is good. And I saw him talking about, there was always a rivalry between him and Ziggy, and they were very, very different people. Rest in peace, Ziggy Schmidt. He was a very, very different personality than a Bruce Arena, and they both went about their business in very different ways. But I think there was a mutual respect, and this is also a generation now that is dying out, for lack of a better phrase, in that they all kind of started and came up through the college ranks, and even then were very, very competitive. When you talk about Bruce and Bob Bradley and Ziggy Schmidt. And that's where everything was growing out of. And that's just not the case anymore. And we're not going to see that type of progression and pathway that someone like Bruce Arena had. And that he is still here and that he is still being successful, even though the world has changed and the soccer world has dramatically changed. He's been a part of it all, and he has seen it all. And he has been able to, like a Sir Alex, move and change with the times and still, I think, retain the core of who he is, his principles, his ideology, all that kind of stuff. And that's not always an easy thing to do. What else?
Wild game between San Jose and Columbus. Columbus, a team I'm high on. They opened up with a 4-0 win over Vancouver and look to be cruising to another victory here. 3-1 lead late and a man advantage. And then they somehow concede 2 set-piece goals in the final minute, so it ends up 3-3. It's amazing how San Jose can drag all these teams into these chaotic games. Caleb Porter was very disappointed afterwards, and I don't blame him. This should have been 3 points in the bank.
Zelarayan, where do you put him in terms of the rankings of players in? And maybe he doesn't get the credit that he deserves because he plays in Columbus, but I think people know him for the star that he is. But where would you put him in terms of, is he top 5 for you?
Top 5 player in the league right now, yes.
Okay.
One of the great free kick takers we've seen in MLS. Yep. And so he got 2 goals. Zardes got the other for Columbus. So, yeah, super
Zardes
high.
came off the bench again, so I know people are talking about
Miguel
that.
Berry getting the start. Disappointing result for Columbus, but I'm with you on Zelarayan. Certainly one of the best players in MLS. Can't say enough good things about him. Colorado, who rough start to the season for them, knocked out in CCL and then lost 3-0 to LAFC in their first game. They bounced back with a 3-0 win over Atlanta. Already some concern about Joseph Martinez. We all thought this was going to be a big bounce back campaign for him. No goals in the first 2 games. Hasn't looked great. Too early for...
I mean, you're trying to recapture something, which is why we'll talk about this in a little bit, but why we all kind of stood up in our seats when Carlos Vela came out and scored 3 goals in the first game. But you can be led astray, and your eyes can deceive you. So yeah, I mean, I think we all want him to do well, but trying to recapture that doesn't always work. I still think that he has some goals in here. Maybe not to the extent that we want or has happened in the past, but he's still a good player and he'll figure it out.
As you mentioned, the final game of the weekend, we covered it on FS1 last night. LAFC Portland. Rodolfo Landeros hosted, did a masterful job.
Did a great job. Yeah, that is not easy, man. It's not even easy, even in your first language, reading off the prompter and making it sound melodic and making it sound smooth. And so, hats off to being able to do it in his second language. He did. He made it sound unrehearsed and he made it sound smooth.
And John Strong, too, excellent as a host on Saturday. Yep. So Rob Stone becomes the first person ever to be Wally Pipp twice in the same weekend. But LAFC Portland, quite the eventful game. Jimmy Chara, I guess we can expect this every weekend now. He's going to score a bicycle kick goal. He did it again. Is
it a bike? Is it a bike?
This one you thought was a little bit questionable?
No, I'm willing to, what, in the VAR situation where it has to be clear and obvious. It's one of those where, yes, he does have his foot kind of on the ground, and so it's much more of an overhead kickish type of thing, or a tricycle or a kickstandish bike type of thing. But I think it just passes as a bike. It's certainly not as bikey as his one last week, but the fact remains that he scored 2 bikes in successive weeks in Major League Soccer. It's just, it's absolutely amazing.
I think Portland would have probably won this game 11-11, but Claudio Bravo gets himself sent off in the second half. LAFC pile on the pressure. They get a stoppage time equalizer, Mamadou Fall. But the big story from an LAFC perspective, Vela comes off at halftime. They said it was just precautionary, but given the way the last couple of years have gone, your antenna goes up. You know, we were all so excited, as you mentioned, that hat trick in week 1. Is he back to his best, back to his MVP form? And now
well, you know, people out there were either thinking or texting on their chains or doing whatever and say, oh, here we go, because we've seen this before. And the reason I think it's still right for us to get excited when Carlos Vela comes out of the chute, scores a hat trick, given the fact that sometimes you forget it's only a couple of years ago where he scored 34 goals and 15 assists in one season. I mean, just think how amazing that is in Major League Soccer to be able to do that, which had led me at the time to say that he was one of the top 25 players in the world. And I stand by that, even though people argued with me. He's not even close right now, and certainly over the last couple of years, it's not even about whether he is even approaching those levels, because he isn't even coming close to approaching those levels. It's literally about actually getting him on the field. And yet, he plays a half. He had impact, and had he stayed on and continued on, I think he would have had more opportunities. But with Carlos Vela, like all great players, it's not about completely shutting him down. You just have to limit the damage and make him as predictable as possible. And I actually think that Portland did a pretty decent job doing that. But then he comes off at halftime, comes back onto the bench, and we're trying to get information, and we get very, very limited information from LAFC, and it's precautionary. And so now like you said, your antenna goes up and says, uh-oh, here we go again, because it didn't seem big the last time he got hurt, and he was out for a long time. So, yeah, and for Steve Cherundolo, I think he recognizes, as any coach would, that his fortunes can be tied to someone like Carlos Vela. And fortunes relative to what LAFC is. And we talked about this on the pregame show, that for all of the good that LAFC has brought to their fans, to this city, to this league, and all of the attention that they have got, mostly positive, and it's still a situation where, relative to their neighbors down the way, the Los Angeles Galaxy, they haven't won an MLS Cup. And they have to find a way to do that in the same way that Atlanta did, because that is what Major League Soccer is all about. And it's going to get that much harder if they don't have Carlos Vela.
We broadcast the LA Galaxy on Saturday, LAFC on Sunday. In your opinion, which is the better team this season?
Oh, the better team. Well, Vela is important, but I actually think the Galaxy is better than
Let's
LAFC.
assume Vela and Chicharito stay healthy the whole season.
Yeah, they're different types of teams. I think a Galaxy by a smidge, a real smidge. The Galaxy's not great, and neither is LAFC yet. We might end the season great, but I think the Galaxy has more balance this year than I've seen in the past. I think Greg Vanney has really said, look, while we want to be expansive and we want to live up to the great Galaxy teams of the past, you can't quite do this, and you're seeing incremental growth, like a Kevin Cabral or something, who still isn't yet the player that I think they want him to be, or that he possibly can be, but he just beats you with speed. He's bulked up a little bit, and he's gotten better. But if that trend continues, either through the season or for the next couple of years, this Galaxy team will eventually turn into a great team. And I think they're more consistent from top to bottom.
Last MLS note, we just talked about Vela and Chicharito. Another big-name Mexican is headed to MLS. It is official, Hector Herrera to the Houston Dynamo. This is a guy with 96 caps from Mexico. He was chosen the best player at the last Gold Cup, which we covered. If they qualify, he'll presumably be starting for them in Qatar. We always judge these moves on whether they move the needle for you. Does Hector Herrera to Houston move that needle?
Yeah, he moves the needle in that I love him as a player. Okay? And while the Mexican national team players, they irritate me and irk me, and I scream and yell and all that kind of stuff, the reality is that while I would hate to play against him, I would love to have him on my team. And so I think that this type of player, and I still think he has some fuel left in the tank, and I think that the way that he plays, I want him on my team. And he's going to a difficult situation with Houston, and I think he is going to find it incredibly challenging, maybe in a way that he has never faced, or a challenge that he has never faced in his career. But yeah, I think, and then there's the business part of this, right? They're paying him a lot of money, and this is a big Mexican national team player that can bring in a lot of Mexican-American fans that exist either in Houston or around the league. And we've talked since the league started about, it's not pandering, it's actually sound business practice to recognize that when you have a group in a market that you are trying to sell to, having a player that group identifies with and is more liable to respond to can help. Doesn't always work out that way, and Houston has had limited success and limited numbers of Mexican players to attract that audience. This is certainly a big star that I think is going to raise awareness, but you don't have to be Mexican American to appreciate Hector Herrera. I love this guy. I don't want to see him play, and I want him on my team. So good job. And maybe it bodes well for the future for Houston Dynamo with new ownership, that they are going to spend some more money, because let's be honest, Houston's been irrelevant for a number of years.
Now, he is a proven veteran who's actually accomplished things, so that doesn't move the needle for me. As you know, I'm a sophisticated fan, so I prefer the 19-year-old South Americans.
Exactly. You believe in development. You know, wasting all this money, and it only confirms your suspicion that this is a farm minor development type of league. Got it.
So let's transition to CCL. The quarterfinals get underway this week. We have 3 MLS versus Liga MX matchups. The one that isn't is NYCFC facing Comunicaciones from Guatemala, who knocked out Colorado in the last round.
Mm-hmm.
NYCFC, a sputtering start in MLS. They haven't scored a goal in their first 2 games, but I feel like they're more focused on CCL right now. And so I think they're strong favorites. They will be playing their home leg this week at Rentschler Field, Rob Stone's favorite stadium. Yeah. I mean, is that frustrating to you that this team doesn't get to play a real home game in this competition?
I'm beyond frustrated when it comes to NYCFC relative to their stadium situation. And look, I'm sure they are too, but you came into the league promising that this was going to be a temporary situation, that you were going to build a stadium. It's not a question of money. It's just a question of working through all the bureaucracy and having yourself a location and a stadium situation that makes sense. And obviously it's taken a lot longer and will continue to take more time, which is fine. But if and when you are held to account, and if and when people get frustrated and or angry because nothing has happened, I think that you have to accept that and recognize why that is. And they continue to play games, whether it's Major League Soccer games or whether it's CCL games, out of market sometimes across the river there at Red Bulls Arena. And they have a hard time sometimes with scheduling when it comes to Yankee Stadium, which is the worst place in Major League Soccer to watch a game. Probably to play a game, depending on who you are. So, but this is a focus, and this is a check the box type of situation that I think has all of these teams from Major League Soccer licking their lips.
JP Della Camera will call this match. I can tell you he is hard at work right now researching Comunicaciones, so he'll be ready to go.
He's ready to go, huh? Okay.
The other Tuesday...
Those are Tuesday. Okay, yeah, Tuesday.
The other Tuesday game, Seattle will play host to Leon. I lean Leon in this matchup. They're in pretty good form in Liga MX. They have a manager I love in Ariel Holan. Veteran team, Luis Montes, Angel Mena, Jean Menezes, Victor Davila, Elias Hernandez. And as we talked about, Seattle, if this matchup was a month or 2 from now, I might feel differently, but it seems like they're still figuring things out. And they got probably the strongest Mexican side of the 3. So I would lean Leon going through here in what should be a fascinating...
It's in Seattle for the first game?
Yep.
Okay. I'll take Seattle. In that. I think okay, we'll go to the Wednesday games here. But between those 2 games, I think both NYCFC and Seattle win at home. Seattle might not win with enough conviction to make it stand over the 2 legs, but I do think NYCFC.
Oh well, yeah, I was saying Leon to go through. I'm not specifically the first leg.
I still think Seattle goes through. Yeah.
And then Wednesday, another matchup where I like the Liga MX team. Cruz Azul will take on Montreal. They host the first leg. No Jonathan Rodriguez. He's off to Saudi Arabia, but they've brought in the likes of Uriel Antuna, Angel Romero, Charlie Rodriguez. They've got Santi Jimenez up top. So pretty good team in Cruz Azul. I think they're a little bit better than Montreal. So I also lean the Liga MX side in this matchup.
I'm with you there. Cruz Azul over Montreal.
And then one
Au revoir, my friends.
And then one where I like the MLS team is New England taking on Pumas. We did the second leg, Pumas Saprissa. I wasn't overly impressed by that Pumas side. And New England, another team that seems very focused on CCL. They didn't get to play in the previous round because of the situation with the Haiti team, but in our conversations with Bruce Arena, it seems like he does want to win this competition. And I think they go through in this matchup.
I think that the rust, if you will, for New England and not having that preseason come together because of this, the craziness that happened with COVID. I think Pumas goes through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we both we just disagree on which, but we both think when the dust settles, 2 MLS teams,
Yes.
2 Liga MX.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it goes your way, then it would guarantee an MLS versus Liga MX final because you're picking the 2 MLS teams on one side of the bracket and 2 Liga MX teams on the other.
Oh, right, yeah.
So
I guess you're right. Yeah.
All right, so that's the fun stuff.
Okay.
Unfortunately, now we have to transition to an incredible tragedy, which you cover soccer globally. Unfortunately, you can get desensitized sometimes to fan violence, but every now and then there's an incident that's just next level that shocks everybody. And we had one of those Saturday night in Mexico in the Queretaro Atlas Liga MX match. For those that didn't see it, a riot broke out in the stadium. The Querétaro fans attacked the Atlas supporters. It spilled over onto the field and pretty much everywhere around the stadium. And I mean, some of the images are just horrifying. It looked like Black Hawk Down. You're seeing like dead corpses being dragged around. And, I say dead corpses. We're taping this on a Monday morning. So situation's fluid. By the time you listen to this, the story might have changed. But as of now, there's still some dispute about what actually happened. Believe it or not, the local authorities are putting out the story that there were no deaths. There were just 20-something injuries, most of them minor, only a couple of people in critical condition. Meanwhile, the media is reporting at least 17 people dead. And I have to say, based on the video I saw,
right,
I think that corroborates more the media version of this. And the reaction, as you'd expect, FIFA, CONCACAF, Liga MX have all put out statements condemning the violence. But, it's interesting. When we first saw this, maybe we have Russia on the brain right now, so that's why we immediately went here. But we all thought this was like, you might have to ban Mexico from the World Cup. You might have to shut down Liga MX. And I don't know, I could be wrong, but early on, I'm not getting the vibe that it's going to be that level of punishment. They suspended the games for the remainder of the round, but the games next weekend, as of now, are still scheduled to go on. As we just mentioned, we're going to have a CCL game in Mexico, Cruz Azul, Montreal at the Azteca this week. So I'm curious to see what the punishment is, but hopefully they really rise to the level of how bad this incident was. This was one of the worst things I've ever seen.
I mean, so we got done with the Charlotte game, and all of this news was breaking. And as you, I think, rightly prefaced this, we don't have all of the information. We see stuff, and look, we live in a time where you can see something, and what you think it is ends up not being that. Having said that, the lack of information and the lack of confirmation when it comes to stuff that has been out there on multiple platforms and multiple sources out there, it's just in a day and in a week where we are getting up and seeing horrific images from a war that is going on now. This is a soccer game. And the horrific scenes and videos and photos that came out of that were sickening, right? These and to the people responsible out there, these are not humans to be understood or rehabilitated. And I hope that they catch and prosecute every single one of them to the fullest extent of the law out there, and they get what's coming to them. I don't have hope that is necessarily going to happen, but there has to be some serious repercussions when it comes to what happened and how serious this is. And when it comes to the soccer that we have, look, we have wonderful partnerships and friendships and connections to Mexican soccer and to Liga MX, and some very, very public and high-profile types of connections that we're hoping are going to grow as we get into the next years, and in particular to the ramp up to the 2026 World Cup, where we are joint hosts with our friends down in Mexico, and obviously our friends up north in Canada. But this cannot just be swept under the carpet. This is real problems, and if there is systemic problems that exist in Mexican soccer, that we are going to get in bed with that when it comes. And I say we, American soccer in general, certainly Major League Soccer that is looking to it, and the World Cup. Then you really got to think hard as to, is this something that is worth it in terms of the future connections that we have. Now, like you said, we have CCL that could be effective. We have an upcoming window, World Cup qualifying window that could be effective, including a U.S.-Mexico game in the Azteca now that we already know is going to be more limited type of capacity, I think there. And then, obviously, the teams that were involved, and Liga MX, which has to do something, I think, league-wide to recognize the severity and the seriousness of what has happened. And like I'm joining the chorus out there of people that are looking at this and are incredibly sad, incredibly angry, incredibly frustrated, and want action taken, and real legitimate action to do anything that you possibly can to make sure people understand that this is completely unacceptable. Not unacceptable because of in sports, just unacceptable in human life. Anyway.
Yeah, so we'll update you on any new developments on that story, but that's it.
All right. Well, be good people. Be human, right? Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, we'll head around Europe. Don't go away. All right, we're back. Let's do some Europe stuff here, because there was all sorts of stuff that was happening. Where do you want to start?
Let's start in the Premier League, and we're going to start with an American. Is it coach or manager? What's the proper term you have to use out there? Jesse Marsch.
Gaffer? Is that the one they use over there?
Yeah. Jesse Marsch had his first match in charge of Leeds. They lost 1-0 to Leicester. But the performance was encouraging. Most Leeds fans seemed happy. They created lots of chances. They were denied by Schmeichel, including one point-blank save on Rafinha. Yep. So overall positive for Jesse Marsch. But I do want to take you back to his introductory press conference in which, I know he was kind of reading the room, but he really went out of his way to sort of placate the audience. He said the stigma around American coaches is justified because they don't have the experience that their European counterparts do, which is why he came to Europe to learn from them. And he also said that Ted Lasso hasn't helped. He said he hasn't watched it, which I might have to strap him to a lie detector test on that, like Jerry Seinfeld, Melrose Place. But and he said he's going to make every effort to call it football and not soccer, and to use all the appropriate terms. So the reviews in England for that press conference were very positive. But back here in the States, there were some people that felt like he went a little too far to try to placate the English audience. And I heard the term sellout being thrown around. How did that hit you? I mean,
he's never going to please everybody, right? So you have your three buckets of Jesse Marsch people, right? You have ones that, what do the kids say? They stand, I stand with him or whatever. So no matter what he does, people are going to support him and stand up for him. Then you have the middle that can be persuaded. And I think after his initial press conference, I think there were people that said, this guy's smart. He's interesting. He gets it. I think he has perspective. And I can be wooed. And then you have the ones that no matter what Jesse says, they're going to take issue with it. And by the way, this is not even necessarily relative to who you are, where you live, your nationality, or anything like that. Those three buckets exist even here in the United States when it comes to someone like Jesse. So I think he did read the room. His responsibility is not to fly the flag, in this case it would be the American flag, to his detriment, or die on hills that don't enable him or don't put him in the best possible chance to succeed. He's got to do and say and act in the way that he feels is going to give him the best possible chance of success in a situation that we know is already kind of stacked against him because of, well, first off, just because he is a young, new coach coming into a difficult situation, and that he's American. And he, I think, pointed that out in the way that he should have. I don't agree with the soccer thing, calling it soccer. If you call it soccer. And I don't think it is. I don't think it's a form of disrespect to call it soccer in a country and culture that calls it football, especially since the word soccer actually originated and came from said country. I do think that the performance in general, people said this is a better looking Leeds team. You're going to get that bounce. You better get that bounce, but that it didn't result in an actual result is not. It's not good for him. He still, as time, we knew he was going to be judged on the results that he gets in order to save this team from going down. It's not going to be easy. He knew the gig that he was getting into. Some of the criticism, which was interesting, was the post game huddle, bringing the players together and how that played, because Jesse is, as I said, a very smart person. He understands that the words that he chooses to use will be dissected, and they can have incredible impact and effect on how he is viewed and how his players view both him and themselves to a certain extent. And so he is sending messages out there and spinning as he's doing it. The huddle, just in general, a huddle after the game, I always find very performative. It's kind of performative BS to me. I don't think it has the desired effect that coaches may want it to have. And as a matter of fact, I think it can have an adverse effect. And in this case, in such a public manner, it can be viewed very Ted Lasso-y. Not that Jesse cares what I say or anybody else says. And if he felt that was appropriate, then obviously he was doing it to send a message either to his players or by that optic of sending it out to others. I just don't think in general, even if it's Pep Guardiola, I don't think it's the place nor the time to do it. And as a matter of fact, I think you have diminishing returns right after the game in terms of if you really have information that you want to impart on them, in that moment, I think it's very, very difficult for players, either individually or collectively in a group setting like that in front of the world, to take that in. So, but Jesse, all this stuff, speaking of all of this stuff is bullshit. The only thing that really matters is that he gets this team to win. And that's ultimately what he will be judged on.
Yeah, and that performance, and this is coming from the biggest Marcelo Bielsa groupie, was definitely an improvement over the way they'd been playing, much more organized defensively. I suspect if they play like that the rest of the way, they will stay up. So,
but is it a change in the way that they play? I mean, would Bielsa say, I could have played like that, but that's not the romantic in him? Is it a change like that? So everyone says, well, it's a change to a good. But if you base the last 4 years on an ideal and on a romance of playing a specific way, and baked into that way is actual risk, then why is that? I thought this was a continuation. So is this a tweaking of the system, or is this just a pragmatism that everybody's going to associate with being good?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. They cited one of the reasons they hired Jesse Marsch is because his style is not that dissimilar from Marcelo Bielsa, the pressing and all that. So it's going to be interesting to see how he balances that with the need to definitely be tighter at the back, because that had been killing them. The big game of the weekend was the Manchester derby, which City won 4-1, 2 goals each by De Bruyne and Mahrez. I mean, there have been some City United games that have been pretty mortifying in recent years if you're a Manchester United fan. Usually at Old Trafford, they've actually done pretty well at the Etihad, but this one was at the Etihad, and this looked like a big team playing a small team. I know the stats don't always tell the story, but in this case they did. It was 70-30 possession, and City outshot United. It was something like 24-5. So a much superior team. De Bruyne with just an absolute masterclass of a performance. No Cristiano Ronaldo.
Ooh.
Because of a hip injury.
Allegedly.
It sounds like he was injured, but it's a reflection on how screwed up they are right now, that there were some rumblings that he might not actually be injured, and we all thought there could be some legs to that story. And in fact, it sounds like he took an unauthorized trip to Portugal, which the club wasn't thrilled about. So there's all sorts of stuff going on there with United, but they get thumped here by Manchester City.
They're a mediocre team, right? And that's not saying anything that is crazy out there. We understand that, and they have been now for some time. And when they get up against a really, really good team, rather than rise to the occasion, they just do what they do, which is not good enough in terms of the elite status that they once were.
Liverpool beat West Ham 1-0, so the gap stays 6 with Liverpool having played one fewer game. So I think this is going to go down to the wire. I do think Liverpool's schedule is a bit more challenging than City's. Plus, they have to go to the Etihad in the head-to-head game between those two. But still, I wouldn't surprise me at all if Liverpool won it. I think it's going to go down to the wire. One player that Liverpool have not been able to shut down this season is Josh Sargent. He in their 5th-round FA Cup matchup with Norwich, he got an assist. Remember, he had also gotten an assist against Liverpool at Anfield in the Premier League. This time around, Greg Berhalter was in attendance, I presume, to watch Sargent. So are we sort of trending here towards a Josh Sargent recall for these March qualifiers?
But he was playing in the midfield on the wing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so Greg Berhalter's watching this, and he's saying, okay, I am in desperate need of a striker for my team, which at one point you were the great redheaded hope for us, and it didn't quite work out like that. So now I'm watching you play a very different position, which you are playing well, but is it good enough to bring in? And am I starting you over Weah? Am I starting you over Pulisic? Am I starting you if we're playing that type of position out wide? Where is he actually playing? I mean, this is good. I'm glad that he is playing, number one, and I'm glad that he is playing well in a very, very difficult, dire situation. I mean, I think it's not that they've checked out, but this is a team that's going to go down. But we all look at it in terms of the U.S. men's national team. So, I mean, are we pinning our hopes of qualifying for the World Cup here in this next window on Josh Sargent? Because if we are, then we're dumb. That's my expert opinion.
Incidentally, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Manchester City all still alive in the FA Cup, and they were kept apart in the quarterfinals. So we could have a very tasty climax to the FA Cup here if all 3 of those teams advance to the semis. We'll see who would end up playing who in the semifinal. Back to the Premier League. Speaking of Chelsea, 4-0 win over Burnley. Christian Pulisic is flying right now. There's a player that you can rely on in these March qualifiers. He picked up a goal and assist in this game, playing very well right now.
Well, we need him to be Christian Pulisic. And what does that mean? We've talked about it before. He does not need to be the best player on the field, but that he is playing, that he is starring, that he is playing well. Again, form can be fallacy, and it's a very, very different circumstance and situation with Chelsea right now for Christian Pulisic than it is the U.S. national team. When he gets on that plane, he just better be of sound body, obviously, and that's always a question with him, but more importantly, of sound mind. And I hope some work has been done in the interim between windows to make sure that he's coming in with realistic expectations from Greg Berhalter and his coaching staff, so that we get the best out of him. And speaking of that window, last night in the LAFC game, we saw Weston McKennie in a boot and on crutches, actually here in Los Angeles at the game. He's going to be out until the end of Serie A. As we said last week on the show, best case scenario is he has a good solid recovery, a good solid rest and return, and a good preseason with Juventus, and he's ready to go come the fall for club and country, and then obviously, knock on wood, we're at the World Cup come November, December.
One last Premier League note: Arsenal have something going on right now. They beat Watford 3-2.
Shh, don't mess it up.
Saka has really emerged as one of the best players in the Premier League. He's terrific. Odegaard, very good as well. Martinelli scored a nice goal. Smith Rowe didn't play in this game, but he's terrific. They are now in fourth, and they have games in hand on the trailing pack. So I've been saying Manchester United all along, but I would put Arsenal now as the favorite to get fourth. I think they're in pole position, and I like the way they're playing.
They are flying.
Next up, Spain, Real Madrid. One of their better performances of the season on the heels of a big Champions League game, which we'll talk about in a minute. They actually went down 1-0, but then scored 4 unanswered. Camavinga with a beautiful goal. They beat Sociedad 4-1, and Sevilla drew. So 8-point gap for Real Madrid at the top of the table. Barcelona, 2-1 win away to Elche. A little bit of a come down from their recent performances, but still a nice gritty victory. Memphis Depay with a late penalty was the winner. They have
come down in terms of what? I mean, they won the game.
No,
just the way that they played.
Yeah, just it wasn't like quite the show that they've been putting on, but still very positive. Keeps the momentum going. No, absolutely.
I mean, I think all they care about is winning.
No, absolutely. The story is very positive for them right now. They're on a good run. They've moved up to third. They leapfrogged past Betis this weekend. And by the way, they're not that far off from Sevilla, especially considering they have a game in hand. So I wouldn't put it past them if they keep playing this way to finish second, which would be higher than they finished last season with Messi.
We'll be right back where we started.
I mean, they're talking about Real Madrid. That seems a step too far to me. They're looking at possibly.
Barcelona has 48 points and Real Madrid has 63 points. Yeah, that's not happening.
I mentioned that they leapfrogged Betis because Betis lost to Atletico Madrid 3-1. João Felix with 2 goals in this one. He has 4 in his last 4. He scored against Manchester United in the Champions League. Always been a big fan of his. I think Simeone has held him back the last couple of years, or would be talking about him in the same bracket as Mbappe and Holland. But it's so much talent that it manages to shine through sometimes, and we're seeing that right now.
He's held them back in a Griezmann-esque type of way, where this player is obviously talented, skillful, and yet he's playing in a team that doesn't always view that. It's not that they don't see it, but they don't use it and utilize it in the way that it should be. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm a huge fan. I think he's an incredible talent. So that's the situation in Spain. Next up, Serie A. You and I have talked about how seeing Napoli, AC Milan, and Inter Milan in this 3-way race for the title has sort of given us some nostalgia for the glory days of Serie A in the 80s and 90s. The huge game this weekend was Napoli hosting AC Milan, and I saw lots of articles harkening back to this famous match played in 1988 at what was then called the São Paulo Stadium. It's since been renamed the Diego Maradona Stadium. And that was a game late in the season that essentially decided the title. Maradona and Careca on one side, they both scored in that game. AC Milan had Gullit and Van Basten. Van Basten came off the bench to score. Gullit played great. And Milan ended up winning 3-2 that day and went on to win the title. By the way, it's shrouded in controversy because there's stories that the mafia might have convinced some Napoli fans to throw that game. But nevertheless, I saw it was interesting. I saw some people this week identify that match as the absolute pinnacle of Serie A that encapsulated that whole glorious era. There were others that point to a game in 1998 between Juventus and Inter Milan. There was also a late season title decider where you had that pre-injury Ronaldo on one side, you had Del Piero and Zidane on the other. It was a game where it had this infamous controversial moment where this defender Mark Giuliano took out Ronaldo in the box. Should have been a rigore for sure, but the referee didn't call it. When the Juventus scandal erupted a few years later, lots of people point to that play as that. You see, we told you there was something shady going on here.
There you go.
So I know you played in that era. So I mean, it's.
I mean, yeah. So I'm pulling up the Serie A standings here, and
I should mention what actually went on in this game instead of giving you a history lesson about.
Go ahead. It's good though. That's why we like you, Mosse. That's why people want to take pictures with you in the bar, okay? Because of the context that you provide.
Yeah. So AC Milan won this game 1-0. Olivier Giroud with a goal early in the second half. Huge win for them. They vault to the top of the table. They are 3 points up on Napoli, 2 points up on Inter, who have played one fewer game. Inter kind of got their mojo back. They beat Salernitana 5-0. Lautaro Martinez with 3, Dzeko with 2. So they had been sputtering lately, but they break out in this game. Juventus beat Spezia 1-0. Morata with the winner. They're hanging around. They're 7 points back, and I would put them in the conversation. Not the prime candidate for the title, but I do think they are in the mix. So,
I mean, Juventus, obviously they're in fourth, so they're in they got their Champions League thing there. But like you said, 4 points behind Napoli, all right, 5 points behind Inter, and 7 points behind Milan. And to your point, in the historic way that this looks here with Milan and Inter and Juve and Napoli and everybody there, and then you got Roma and Lazio down there, and even Fiorentina, and I mean, the changes in terms of the compare and contrast with back then, would be the Atalantas and that kind of stuff. But
I will
amazing.
say that on Juventus, we talk about McKennie going down from a USA perspective. It's also a huge loss for Juventus. He had been playing great. I mean, he was in the conversation before they got Vlahovic. I think he probably has this title now, but he was in the conversation as possibly the best player on that team.
Yep.
That's how good he's been this season. So losing him for the rest of the initial timetable, you thought, well, maybe best case scenario, he could be back for the last few games. But as you mentioned, they shut the door on that this weekend. Massimo Allegri said, no, we're going to hold him out for the rest of the campaign. So we'll see if Juve can overcome that and make a race of it here in Serie A.
Well, he's here in LA. I'm gonna reach out and see if we can get Weston McKennie. We'll see if he's around. Maybe
Luis Aguilar pointing.
There we go.
Thumbs up.
All right. Well, we'll see what we can do.
And then maybe he'll do Hope Solo's podcast right after, and she'll put that interview before ours, and all the articles will reference that interview. Next up, Bundesliga. I keep saying it. All is not right in Bayern Munich's world.
We'll keep saying it. All right.
1-1 draw against Leverkusen. Leverkusen's goal, a Thomas Müller own goal. So, we know what a legend he is, but not a good moment for him.
He finished it nicely at the near post, though.
Dortmund did not play. Their match against Mainz was postponed. Mainz had a COVID outbreak. A real one, not one of those Arsenal made-up ones. And then, actually some news involving John Brooks. His contract with Wolfsburg is done at the end of the season. They announced they will not be re-signing him. So some speculation about his future. Will he stay in Europe or will he come to MLS? There's a lot of talk that some MLS teams could use a veteran left-footed center back like him, and that would potentially help his chances of getting back in the squad for the World Cup. I know there's a type of person that bristles at the notion that a guy leaving Europe to come to MLS would bolster his national team chances, but if he's struggling there, if he came here for one of the top teams in MLS, maybe the Galaxy or somebody, and played well, I think it would help.
Somebody would have to obviously pay him a good chunk of money. I mean, he would probably get into the designated player range in terms of what he would want for that type of move, because he's going to have other suitors out there in Europe. Would it help him? I don't know. I mean, Greg Berhalter has been very, very, I guess, very, well, from his perspective, very, very clear. But who knows? Ultimately, it could just be I like this player, I don't like this player. But he's talked about his form and his problems that he has had. So now coming to a league where there is much less of a disparity between the haves and the have-nots, and therefore, I guess, in a strange way, a more competitive type of environment, would he be further exposed for whatever problems are ailing him right now, or would that change? I don't know. I still think there's going to be, and rightfully so, people that want to pay him a good chunk of money because with that left foot, his ability to play out of the back, the understanding. This is an American national team player, and all of his experience that he has. I could see it happening. Yeah, in the summer. Yeah, but for example, like Walker Zimmerman isn't a designated player. And see how important he is for his team. So if you have this work of what John Brooks can be, and people are going to pay for that.
Well, for example, the Galaxy, there's some rumors about them going after Sergio Ramos, who I know is Sergio Ramos, but hasn't played in forever because of injuries. If it's taking all the different factors into account, if they had a choice between signing Sergio Ramos or John Brooks, who do you think they should go for?
I don't know what's going on with Sergio Ramos. I mean, 1 minute he's posing, and the dude looks like that. What was that movie that we about the Trojan warriors, the 311 or 310, or it was a number movie, 300, whatever it was. Well, the only reason I know that, or the only reason that came to mind was there was some workout that who's the lead singer? Not the lead singer, the lead actor in that the 300. Gerard Butler, was he in that?
Luis?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. There's some workout that these guys did to have them to get them in the shape that they looked like. Well, Sergio Ramos, if you follow him over the last couple of years, he's looked at like just this incredible specimen of a human being, and yet even at the height of his physical abilities, shall we say, he leaves and he can't function anymore as an athlete. It's maybe it's just this finely tuned machine that if one thing is out of order, the spark plug's not turned in or something like that. Okay.
It's an unfair question. You're right, because
it's not an unfair question. There's no unfair questions on this. I would take. John Brooks at least is playing.
That's what I'm saying. So, yeah, we don't. And finally, Ligue 1. This will lead us into Champions League. PSG lost 1-0 to Nice. Kylian Mbappe did not play due to suspension. And look, I know Messi's been good lately, racking up the assists, but it is startling for what was supposed to be this star-studded team, how much of a one-man team they are this season. You pull Mbappe out of it and they become just bang average. Frankly, they haven't looked that great collectively with him on the field, but at least he can cover up a lot of their ills. And so it doesn't matter in Ligue 1. They're long gone. They're going to win the title for sure. But nevertheless, it's another demonstration that it just hasn't clicked this season for them. And that leads into Champions League. That game is on Wednesday, so I'll leave it for last. Let's do the Tuesday games first. Bayern Munich will host Salzburg. Brendan Aronson and company, who it finished 1-1 in Austria in leg 1. So, although I keep saying all is not right in Bayern's world, you still would expect them to win this game and go through, right?
Yeah, they're going to win it and go through. And it was 1-1, right?
1-1, yeah.
No away goals.
No away goals.
Right.
Bayern, very fortunate. They scored a late equalizer that day. Kingsley Coman. Remember, Aronson was terrific, got the assist on the Salzburg goal. Yep. So interesting to see how he does in this game. And then the other matchup on Tuesday, Liverpool back home protecting a 2-0 aggregate lead over Inter. So that one's done and dusted. Speaking of done and dusted, on Wednesday, Manchester City hosts Sporting. They are 5-0 up on aggregate. So
don't even show it.
Luis Aguilar and I could start at center back from Manchester City, and they'd be fine. Frankly, if Pep puts out a strong lineup, we'd have to start looking up like biggest two-legged aggregate victories. They've got to be close to that. But the matchup everybody is salivating over. Real Madrid will host PSG. Real Madrid trying to overturn a 1-0 first leg deficit. The big news today, Kylian Mbappe, I mentioned, didn't play due to suspension, so you figure, he's going to be healthy. He picked up a knock in training today, is now a doubt for this match. So let's keep an eye on that. That would be...
I got knocked every single training. I mean... Whatever.
The interesting thing for me, putting on my Brazilian hat for 1 second, is if Mbappe is fit, there's a real question about whether Neymar should start this game. He looked bad again at the weekend, and to play those three guys up there in a situation where you're trying to protect an advantage away to Real Madrid, it has to be worth the trade-off. If they were firing on all cylinders, then you'd play all three because they're going to cause so many problems for the Real Madrid defense that, it's worth having the somewhat unbalanced squad. But that's just not happening right now. They haven't clicked all season. Neymar has looked really poor. And so, I don't know. If Mbappe's fit, it would not surprise me at all to have the front three be Mbappe, Messi, and Di Maria, and you save Neymar in case you're in a situation in the second half where you're down and you need a goal. You bring him on, like he came on in the first leg and provided a nice assist to Mbappe. But yeah, I mean, starting him in this game, I think is questionable, although he might not have a choice, because if Mbappe is out or not fit enough to start, then the front three becomes Neymar, Messi, and Di Maria, which is what it was this weekend against Nice when they lost. What do you...
You know what this is?
What?
World's smallest violin. It's a dad joke. I don't care. Fix it.
It's funny. I was talking to my dad about it this weekend. Maybe Pochettino has just reached the point where, you know what? I'm out of here at the end of the season. I'm going to go coach Manchester United. So I'm not going to overthink this. Just play the stars. Then if they lose, it's on them. And if I start getting cute here and not playing the biggest names and they lose, then it becomes my fault.
You played Neymar. If you didn't do this, you played, yeah, exactly.
On the Real Madrid side, Casemiro suspended, Mendy as well at left back, and Toni Kroos is an injury doubt.
Did he take a knock? Probably.
So yeah, that merits watching. This could be a really reconfigured Real Madrid midfield. If Kroos starts, then you'll have Kroos, Modric, two of the three sort of staples there, and I suspect Valverde would be that third guy. If Kroos can't go, then you're probably pairing Modric with Valverde and Camavinga, who would play that pivot role. That would be an interesting storyline. There's a very talented young player who essentially chose Real Madrid over PSG, and who hasn't played a whole lot this season. I've kind of held up Odegaard in a comparison and say, look, I prefer the Odegaard route of if you're not going to play, go somewhere else where you can. And Odegaard, as I mentioned, has been phenomenal for an Arsenal team in the top 4 in the Premier League, while Camavinga is struggling to get on the field. So who would you rather be? I know in Madrid, they feel like Odegaard showed lack of ambition by leaving Real Madrid to go to Arsenal. And, you should be so honored to be at Real Madrid that you should be okay with playing less there than you would anywhere else. That's kind of how they view it.
Yeah, but we've seen this type of thing before. So what you have to decide is, yes, there is a time where this is just not happening. Because it's one thing, if you're actually going to face the challenge and say, I'm going to work through this, and I'm going to prove to you and everybody that actually I deserve to be on the field. That is worth your attention, and that is worth your praise. And you want players that want to do that. But you also, at a certain point, you only have one career. It goes very, very quickly. And if it's not happening, you got to get to a place where you're playing. And look, these guys are able to choose between some very elite teams out there that still want.
And so Camavinga, lo and behold, got to start this weekend against Sociedad, scored a beautiful goal. And because of injuries and suspension, there's a chance he might start Real Madrid's biggest game of the season. So if he plays well there, maybe that changes the whole narrative. But
all right, so taking 1-0 into back to Madrid, right?
It's funny.
I got to score.
After the first leg, I was pretty confident PSG was going to go through. And maybe this is recency bias watching both teams play.
I got Real Madrid.
But now I'm kind of leaning Real Madrid.
I got...
Which for PSG,
no drama.
What a debacle to get Messi and go on the round 16.
Can you imagine to go down
and
Real Madrid?
And the other 3 we have Bayern, Liverpool, and City, right?
Yes, yes. I think we all are in agreement there.
All right, that is it.
That is awesome. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, it's time for AskAlexi. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back. Time for AskAlexi. Use that hashtag AskAlexi out there on the social media platforms and send us your questions, your comments, your concerns, or you can always call us, 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. That is the State of the Union podcast hotline. I think we got one audio question to go and then a couple of Twitter questions, right?
Correct. First up, an audio question. Matt Woods from Orange County, California.
Hey, Alexi. Hey, Mosse. This is Matt Wood from Orange County, California. My question for you is in regards to Gio Reyna and the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. So given that he is fit for the upcoming qualifier, particularly at Azteca against Mexico, is he on the starting roster for Berhalter, or is he going to be used more as a super sub? And if you were in Berhalter's shoes, how would you utilize him, given that he is theoretically healthy for that game? Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt, for calling the hotline. Okay, so there is a school of thought out there that the first game, the one against Mexico in Mexico, that while it's important and you try to get points, the recognition is that second game is the most important. So don't do anything in that first game that is going to prohibit you from being able to get points in the second game. What position do you think that Gio Reyna plays? If someone were to ask you that.
Yeah, he's a bit of a hybrid player. I know that there's a desire to try to put him in that midfield 3 because then that would create space on the wings for Pulisic and Weah and Aronson. But I just think right now he projects more as one of those wide attacking players.
So then he has to either take Christian Pulisic's spot on the left or Weah's spot on the right. And we can make arguments for that. Now, the arguments are based on still a very small sample size, albeit very good, and we've seen what he has done when he is healthy. I'm okay. I don't think you, by any stretch of the imagination, nor do I think that Greg Berhalter is going to do this, throw out the Mexico game, especially with this particular Mexico team. We have had their number now. And I know we're going to go to the well again, and it might show up empty. But this is a Mexican national team that continues to be ripe for the picking. And if you're going to get an opportunity to beat Mexico in Azteca, this is going to be your best one. And maybe who knows when we'll get another chance like this. But you have to be smart. I don't want to take out Weah, who I think has been really good, and I don't want to take out Christian Pulisic. So I don't want to see Gio Reyna out there, which is what you would, to your point, you would have to do. I'm more okay having him be at the top of a 3 back there, and then having, a Tyler Adams and maybe an Acosta or whoever kind of back him up and give him more of that central role. Because I think that ultimately, while this team does not have a 10 per se in the traditional sense, I think that Gio Reyna is the closest thing that we will get, and certainly between now and the World Cup, of having somebody like that. So I like him more in a central type of position.
I love Gio Reyna. When he was playing, I argued he was the U.S. player with the highest ceiling. I think he could honestly be one of the best players in the world. But man, it's just too much time, too much inactivity. If he doesn't play much between now and those games, if he's healthy, you call him back in just to sort of reintegrate him to the squad. But I don't know if you could trust the guy who hasn't really played much in the last, what has it been, like 6 months?
Listen, when I say form is fallacy, I mean it. And there is nothing that precludes Gio Reyna from even not having played or coming in and having a day and having a tremendous impact. The question is, if he's there, is he there just in the capacity to kind of be around everybody? It's interesting because Weston McKennie, who we said was at the game last night at LAFC, you would think he's going to continue to rehab here in Los Angeles. Will he travel with the team? Will he kind of be part of the team? I mean, he's a huge part of the team now, but will he kind of go through that window with them? I don't know. I mean, ultimately, they're going to decide. Again, Gio Reyna, if you say, well, look, this guy's heading in the right direction. He's been a part of the team before. He's faced some injuries, but he's good enough where if he's healthy, he's going to be part of the team. Do you then say, well, you're traveling with us with us too? I think Gio, if he can't play, he's not. I mean, and he's not going to. If you don't think he's going to help you on the field, then you don't bring him. I'm okay though if he is in camp and he is healthy. I'm okay with him starting, and then you go as long as you possibly can, and then you make the changes as need be in the Azteca.
We talked about Sergio Ramos. He has asked to travel with PSG for this Real Madrid game, his old stomping grounds. He wants to be part of the traveling squad, even though he's not playing. So, yeah, sometimes players, they want to,
Could it be that maybe he has some things that he would want to do there and places that he wanted to see and people that he would want to see and maybe some restaurants and or bars or experiences that he would want to do since he has no responsibility on the field?
Before we move on, can I just ask a philosophical question here? Does it make sense for me to say the name of the person if they say it on the call? I know our boss, David Neal, that's one of his big pet peeves. Whenever I'm scripting World Cup shows, I say, now let's go to Jenny Taft standing by with Megan Klingenberg, and then Jenny, hi, I'm Jenny Taft here with Megan Klingenberg. It's like, why do we have to hear that twice? So I always have to see the clip of the interview to make sure whether she said it or not and script accordingly. Perhaps Luis could give me that sort of heads up too, or cut out the part where the guy says his name.
You don't cut it out. You let them identify themselves.
So I should just say, let's start with an audio question. And then
if you did your job and actually listened to the thing beforehand, that Luis puts together for us, then you would have known that Matt Woods from Orange County said, hi, I'm Matt Woods from Orange County, to start off his message that he let us. And then you would have been able to adjust in real time and said, this guy. Let's we got a guy that sent us a question. So
you're right. Luis does send those ahead of time.
Yeah, he does. But you don't want to do the work. That's fine.
That's on
okay.
me.
That's fine. All right. What else we got?
Next up is a Twitter question. My buddy, this guy writes me all the time, Alex Goldstein 87. So I assume this question is directed at me. It's Brazil related. He asks, best Brazil team to not win the World Cup. And he puts as options 82, 98, and 2006.
Ooh, okay. Give people that maybe don't know a little synopsis of each one of those teams in terms of some names involved.
In terms of how they played in these tournaments, the 82 team was the most heartbreaking that they didn't win it, because that was a revered team that enchanted the world. They lost to Italy 3-2, Paolo Rossi with a hat trick. July 5th, 1982, my dad says it's one of the worst days of his life. My dad was in London at the time. He said walking the streets after that game, the English were as sad as like if it had been England that was knocked out. That's how much neutrals love that Brazil team.
And for context, while they won the World Cup in 1994, the way in which they won it in 94 pales in comparison in terms of the respect and, like I said, the reverence of the way that the 82 team played.
Which this has died down recently, but at one point there was very much a feud between the 94 guys and the 82 guys. When Dunga was the coach of Brazil and adopted a more pragmatic style in line with the team that he played in 94, a lot of the 82 guys were media members and came out and criticized him. Then he shot back, well, what do you guys know? You didn't win the World Cup. I did. And it became this whole sort of pissing contest. The Romarios of the world came out and on Dunga's side, it became this whole 94 versus 82. Because, the 94 guys resent that they won the World Cup and they're less beloved than a team that didn't win it. But that 82 team, by the way, that hits Keith Costigan's sweet spot as a fan. You ask him about the 82 Brazil and he has like an orgasm. I mean, Zeke.
Well, but Romario or anybody else, I mean, they're the ones that won it, so I get why they're sensitive to it. But you can't be Brazilian that have made their name and have promoted on Jogo Bonito and like that kind of stuff, and then when you don't give it, yell at people for not recognizing that you're not living up to what the promise of Brazil has been.
The big what if with that team is a young Careca was actually going to be the starting center forward in that World Cup and got injured on the eve of the tournament. We ended up with Serginho up top, who good player, but wasn't the right fit. And if you had Careca with the likes of Zico, Socrates, Falcão, Cerezo, Junior, Eder setting up chances for him, that team might have been unbeatable despite some of their defensive frailties.
All right, so how do they rate, though, relative to 98?
98 also has a big what if for me. In 1997, Romario became very motivated to, first off, after winning the World Cup in 94, Romario just checked out for the next couple of years. And so he lost his place on the team, and Ronaldo emerged, that pre-injury, just incredible version of Ronaldo. He became the star. Romario got jealous, became motivated, decided to get himself in shape and win his place back on the team. And there was a period in 1997 where Ronaldo and Romario started alongside each other. It's the best strike pairing I have ever seen in my life. You had, like I said, that peak Ronaldo pre-injury and a Romario that was playing like it was 1994. And so they played 2 tournaments together. Actually 3 if you count the Tournoi de France, which was held in the summer of 97. It's a tournament where Roberto Carlos scored that crazy free kick goal. It was before the Confederations Cup was held in the site of the World Cup. FIFA decided to organize a small 4-team tournament as a dress rehearsal for the World Cup the next year. It was Brazil, France, England, and Italy. So they played in that tournament together. They then played in the Copa America in Bolivia that summer, which Brazil won. And then they played it in the Confederations Cup in Saudi Arabia at the end of that year, which Brazil won. They beat Australia 6-0 in the final. Hat-trick for Ronaldo, hat-trick for Romario. Unfortunately, in early 1998, Romario kind of let himself go again. He felt like he had won his spot on the team, and he picked up muscle injury. First of all, he struggled at the Gold Cup, was famously denied by Casey Keller many times in a match that you played in, and then suffered a muscle injury. Brazil actually also played 2 warm-up friendlies leading up to that World Cup. One was away to Germany. We won 2-1. Ronaldo scored a late goal. And then another one was home to Argentina. We lost 1-0 at the Maracanã. Late goal by Claudio El Piojo Lopez. And Romario didn't even touch the ball in either game, looked just completely off the pace. And then picked up a muscle injury on the eve of the tournament, ended up missing that World Cup, which to this day, he still cries that he should have been on the squad. He shouldn't have been. He was not in condition to play in that tournament. So that's a little bit of a what if for me. If the 97 Romario had sort of maintained that kind of form for another year, we would have watched them play together at a World Cup. That would have been absolutely sensational. As it was, that 98 team wasn't that good to me. They ended up in the final and then got drilled by France 3-0. And they were lucky to even get to the final of that tournament, frankly. So that one, with all due respect to Alex Goldstein, that doesn't even belong in the conversation here. And then the 2006 team is probably the most talented squad on paper. Now, it didn't play out that way. The players were out of shape, and there was a bit of a tactical mess, too top-heavy. But to have a team with Ronaldinho, Kaká, Ronaldo, and Adriano as your front 4, Cafu and Roberto Carlos as the fullbacks, you had guys like Zé Roberto and Juninho in the midfield. You just look at that squad on paper and you're like, oh my God, it didn't play out that way. But if you're interpreting this question as what was the squad of the highest pedigree that didn't win, you could argue it was the 2006 one. Mind you, this is all Brazil in modern times. Lately, I've become very interested in early history Brazilian football. I've read a couple of books recently about this one written by this famous journalist, Mário Filho. It's called O Negro no Futebol Brasileiro, the Negro in Brazilian soccer, which is about the first half of the 20th century Brazilian soccer sort of through the lens of black players and how football went from this sort of rich aristocratic sport to being the sport of the masses. And man, it's just fascinating to read about all the different players. And I've learned a lot about the 1950 squad that famously lost that game to Uruguay at the Maracanã. And so I've gained an appreciation for some of those players in that era that haven't gotten as much love, the Zizinhos and Ademir. So that belongs in this conversation too, even though that's a little hipster. I mean, we're going back to black and white days, no footage and all that. So,
but when you say best Brazilian team, when I hear somebody say that, I always go with what it means to be a Brazilian player and what it means to be a Brazil team. And so in that case, the order for Alex here, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, you would put 82 at the top then.
Yes, if you're interpreting this question as given the way they played in that World Cup, which was the best team to not win it, I would say in modern times, like I said, you have the 51, which do whatever you want to do with that. It's so far back that maybe to you that doesn't
Well, he only
count.
gave you 3 options, though.
Yeah, of the 3 he gave, no doubt,
Okay.
82.
And then 2006, and then 98. That would be your list.
Yeah, absolutely.
And order there. Think if that 82 had the ability to come back in 84 and play a World Cup. If the World Cup had been going on every 2 years back then, and the opportunities that we would have seen when it comes to the players on Brazil and then this team to kind of get another bite at the apple, huh?
Yeah, so the reason you bring that up is, I haven't read much about this, truthfully, but Luis Aguilar was really hot on this today, and he wanted us to get it in. Apparently, the 2-year World Cup thing is really cooling off, and there are reports that FIFA are kind of recognizing that they're more or less accepting defeat on that. Is that true, Luis? Is that what you've read?
Yeah. I mean, there are some, it's not rumblings out there, especially when it comes to UEFA. I mean, they made it very, very clear that this was not something that they were going to support. And Alexander Sefrin, the president of FIFA, he works it into his conversations that this is not going to happen. And FIFA, in terms of proposing this, they recognized from the start that they needed to win hearts and minds. And while you can have the popular support from a lot of the membership out there, if you don't have UEFA, then you don't have a World Cup. So I don't know ultimately where this is going to go, but until they find a way to prove to people like UEFA and CONMEBOL when it comes to these big dogs that were not on board, it's going to be dead in the water because they need them to have this happen. And they don't want it to happen. They don't want to give players an opportunity to realize their dreams. They don't want to give the rest of the membership of FIFA the opportunity to have additional financial support that could fundamentally change the sport in their countries and cultures. But that's fine. Okay.
And can we end on another Twitter question?
Yeah, sure.
A fun one. Remember the days when the last one used to
Does anybody remember fun or laughter for that matter? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to judge if this is fun. Here we go. Well, you're going to judge.
At @A_X Vega.
Okay.
He asks, your top 3 movie theme and or TV theme music.
Okay. Well, because I actually study and research beforehand, I saw this beforehand and I went and got a few different things. But I want to preface this by saying, and I know you're a connoisseur too when it comes to movies and TV, that at times there can be a difference between a theme for a movie or TV show as opposed to a song, right? I kind of mixed and matched in these things because sometimes, while in and of itself, I think that they're very good songs, there is an overriding theme that kind of has a callback in TV or in more oftentimes in music, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. So, for example, when it comes to television, for me, Cheers. Okay, now that in and of itself is just a song, but it is iconic. It is instantly recognizable. You know exactly what it is. It identifies that show, and it makes you click something immediately when even that first little piano refrain. So that's one of them. There was a show called Moonlighting with Bruce Willis that came out, and I loved the theme for that. I think Al Jarreau sang that, so I loved that. And then I think The Office. I maybe even think, while they're both iconic and they're both instantly identifiable, I would think it would be the Handbags and Glad Rags one for the British Office that I like more, because they're in it. I think that there is a little more cynicism and there's a little more drama or reality, if you will, in that song. I know you're going to probably bring up like Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is absolutely one of those songs.
No, this will complement each other nicely because you went more the TV route.
Well, I'm going to go back to the movie route. So let me just finish this. And for those that know, they know Barney Miller will forever be an incredible, with that bass line that comes in, wonderful. When it comes to movies, St. Elmo's Fire, and I'm not talking about the John Parr Man in Motion single that kind of defines that movie. The love theme for St. Elmo's Fire, I just think is beautiful and instantly identifiable. Chariots of Fire, speaking of fire movies, Evangelist and that, which won Academy Awards and Oscars and Grammys and all that kind of stuff, I think, and was such a huge part of the experience of that movie and the moving way. Dead Poets Society has a really, really good theme that I just think is moving and beautiful. And there's a million other things where the music becomes so much a part of the story, and you sometimes you never realize how impactful music can be until you take it out of a scene. And I know sometimes they do that, especially in the Oscars, to kind of show how important music is. And recently, something like The Social Network with Trent Reznor and Atticus and those two putting together just an amazing theme for movies. So those are some of the things that I thought about. What do you think about?
I am a huge fan of John Williams.
Yeah.
He does a concert at the Hollywood Bowl, at least he used to, every year, and I attended it multiple times, including, by the way, one of the times I went, he brought out Kobe Bryant, which, given how things have transpired, it's kind of, John Williams is 90 years old. It never occurred to me that night that he would outlive Kobe Bryant. It's just, so I immediately thought John Williams. The ones I really like of his, I like all of them really, but the Jurassic Park theme I absolutely love. The JFK one, Oliver Stone's excellent movie where he, to me, factually pointed out everything that happened there.
Exactly.
And then, and that for the third one, you could go E.T., you could go Star Wars,
E.T.,
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones, yeah.
I'll go Indiana Jones.
The John Williams quiz out there is to hum Star Wars, then hum Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then hum Superman. The three of the ones that he did, and they are, everybody's got a style that you can kind of identify, and there's a reason why they go to him, because he's one of the greatest to ever do it. And I certainly would include him in some of the things, but those are the things that stuck out to me. So good question. Was that fun? I thought it was fun.
Yeah, it was terrific.
Okay.
But incidentally, on the movie front, I'm now up to 9 of the 10 Oscar Best Picture nominees I've seen. I saw King Richard, which fascinating movie. You and I should have a conversation one day about just sort of parenting and with young kids, and if you have kids that exhibit at an early age that special talent for a given sport, how should you handle that? Is it the appropriate thing to throw yourself into it to that degree or not?
So you've watched 9 of the 10 movies that are nominated.
Correct.
There's 10 movies that are nominated?
Correct. The only one I haven't seen is Drive My Car, which is available on HBO Max now, so I'll watch it probably this week, and I'll be...
Well, that you have seen 9 of the 10 means you're the only person out there that has seen 9 of the 10, including all of the Academy voters.
I know Luis fancies himself the movie buff on this podcast, but I think this year I got him beat. There's no way he's seen...
You are something. I still get sent these screeners because I'm a member of SAG, and I have a stack. They still send out the actual DVDs, and so I'm going to have to figure. I'm not allowed to, sell them or do anything like that. Nor would I ever.
Member of SAG. Is this because of that movie you did with the Full House twins? What are they?
Exactly. I'm a card carrying and dues paying member of SAG, and it's wonderful. It's great for insurance, and it's great because they send me DVDs of all of the different movies. The problem is I have nothing to play the DVDs on, because I can't remember the last time I used a disc in something like that. So anyway, I can bring them in. Maybe we can watch them together. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, listen, thank you, as always, for sending in your questions, whether it's the hashtag on the social media platforms using that AskAlexi hashtag, or, as we know, the State of the Union podcast hotline, which, again, is 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. All right, we've come to the end of the pod. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll give you my one for the road. Okay, we are back. It's time for my one for the road. So on Saturday, as we were preparing for the Charlotte game, many of us that are soccer and American soccer nerds had our computers on our laps, and we were pulling up the stream from, I think it was at Atlanta, where the annual AGM, the meeting of U.S. soccer, was happening. Why are you saying why would we do that? Well, because there was an election going on, and the election for president of the United States Soccer Federation was happening. The existing and current president of Cindy Cone was taking on the person that she replaced after he resigned a few years ago, Carlos Cordero, who had come back and was challenging to get his position back. Congratulations go to Cindy Cone, Cindy Parlo Cone. She retains the position of president of the United States Soccer Federation. Barely. It was a very close race and ended up being, basically split down the middle. And so she got enough votes that she needed, and she continues on and will continue on in that capacity for the next 4 years. Also, I should say that in that same meeting, there was a request that was brought to order to make it a paid position. Ultimately, it didn't have enough votes to have that happen, so it continues to be a volunteer position. And anybody that volunteers in soccer deserves your praise, even if you might disagree at times, whether it's Cindy or anybody else out there. So thank you, Cindy, first off, for volunteering your time, and congratulations and good luck going forward as the new president of the United States Soccer Federation. But the election, I think, really points out some of the realities that exist for Cindy and for the United States Soccer Federation that has been through a hell of a decade, let's be honest, and has not always come out smelling like a rose through actions of their own and actions of others. This 50-50 type of split means that there is a huge part of the membership of the United States Soccer Federation that doesn't feel that Cindy is acting on their best interests. And that's important because we, as a soccer playing culture, we are only as good as our ability to come together and as our ability to cooperate and be partners in order to go forward. And this exists even beyond the United States Soccer Federation. But the power that is seen, either perceived or in many cases real, that the players and that the professional leagues have is well known. And when it comes to the rest of the membership, they feel like their voice is not being heard. And that's a problem. And that's Cindy Cone's challenge, is to go out there and make sure that those voices for all of the membership that she represents are being heard. And not just heard, but there are actions and follow-up to the real and legitimate problems that exists out there. Now, when it comes to the players and when it comes to the leagues, they have power. Some of it is legal, and it's only increased over the last couple of years. They have power. And what are you going to do with that power? How are you going to push the sport forward? How are you going to help the sport from the top echelons of the professional game and professional players all the way down to the grassroots? Because I do believe that that is your responsibility. And going forward, for example, 2026, we as a soccer playing nation and the United States Soccer Federation as our representation, we got to be ready. We got to be ready to maximize 2026 because it is an incredible opportunity that is being placed in front of us. And having lived through 1994 and 1999, by the way, for the Men's World Cup and the Women's World Cup, it can fundamentally change your trajectory and your future in incredible and positive ways. But if you are not prepared for what is going to come in 2026, then you will be leaving stuff on the table come 2027. And we cannot afford to do that. And it's Cindy Parlo Cone's job as president, and it's all of the United States Soccer Federation, and it's the Athletes Council, and it's the athletes involved, and it's the professional leagues, and it's all of the membership It behooves them to do everything in their power to make sure that something like that is maximized. And with the infighting and the drama and the politics that are inevitable in any type of situation, all of that can get in the way. And we can't afford, as a soccer-playing nation, to have things get in the way. And I know I'm being a little idealistic here, but we're not going to get another chance at this probably for a while when it comes to the men's. Yes, we'll get a women's. We'll have to be prepared for that. But God forbid that we aren't prepared to maximize that, because that will be on us. That will be on whether it's Cindy Barlow-Cohn or me or the Athletes Council or any of the membership or any of the greater soccer out there. That'll be on us, because we had plenty of time, we had plenty of warning, and we had plenty of precedent to look at how important it is. And we can spend time bickering, we can spend time vilifying, we can spend time in court, we can spend time doing things that have absolutely nothing to do with the betterment of the sport, or we can come together and we can try to work on our differences and work through our differences and do what is good for this game and this beautiful game on and off the field, from the top to the bottom, because the potential for us to do something special exists. But it doesn't happen without men and women who are willing to work together. So anyway, that's my little soapbox of that, or getting on that soapbox.
Can I slip one last thing into this podcast?
It's not like we got to go to break or anything.
I know it's a weird transition from your passionate speech there.
But passionate was, but
when we last discussed Michigan basketball on this podcast, Juwan Howard had completely humiliated the university by his antics in that game against Wisconsin. He got himself suspended for the remainder of the regular season. And it didn't look pretty for Michigan basketball on Sunday, because we were in a position where we were playing essentially a must-win game to get into the NCAA tournament on the road against Ohio State, an Ohio State team which is better than us this season, which had already beaten us in Ann Arbor. And we find out right before the game that our star player, Hunter Dickinson, is out with a stomach bug. If you think players that missing games for knocks are soft, I can't imagine what you think about a little food poisoning at the hotel and missing the biggest game.
He had an upset tummy and you didn't play.
Yeah, didn't play.
So will he play? Is there another game or?
So Michigan goes out minus their best player, minus their coach who is suspended.
This is basketball, right? We're talking about here, right?
Yes.
Doesn't basketball maybe more so than any other sport have the definitive type of playing through the flu in Jordan? Wasn't that the iconic moment where he came back in the flu game? Or what? Yes, no?
There is some discussion among Michigan fans in the message boards about Hunter sitting out this game with all that was riding on it. Look, there is some criticism there, but
we in television, we're not supposed to diagnose, right? And we have to be sensitive to the fact that you may feel pain in a very, very different way than I feel pain and others. But I'm trying really hard not to sound grumpy old man.
But you're bearing the lead here.
What's that?
Michigan went out minus their best player, got outplayed in the first half, down 7 at the break, didn't look good, and then came out and played one of our best halves of the season in the second half, ended up winning by 6. Huge win. I thought of your wife. I thought of Stu Holden's wife, and I smiled.
And this is with the interim coach right now, right? Or
Bill Martelli.
The replacement second.
Who between us has been kind of an upgrade.
Really?
Team has been very well coached the last few games. And so we'll see.
So you're good with your coach just taking shots at anybody, literally, as long as he's not coaching.
So now we head into the Big Ten tournament. We play Indiana on Thursday. The bracketology guys, there's a whole industry surrounding like people projecting who's going to make the NCAA tournament or not. They think we're probably in regardless, but I'd like one more win just to be safe. Rutgers, by the way, right in that too.
Right in there.
So we'll see what happens in the Big Ten tournament with them. So
I hope we're both in the.
We've reached the
dance.
Climax of this college basketball, the business end, as they say in England. Hopefully, Jesse Marsch knows to use that term properly. Business end.
Right. I mean, yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna head out of here, but I did just want to reiterate that, we joked about it a little earlier on the pod, but you rightfully get recognition, and I've told you a million times that I will go on the road and people will ask me about you because you are loved and beloved by people out there for what you do. So it was great to see you in that element and getting the just attention and praise that that someone like you deserves. So you are making a dent, my friend. And so be happy in that sense. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Send us those questions. Use that hotline. I'll give it to you one more time just in case you hadn't heard. 657-549-2297. 657-549-2297. This has been the State of the Union podcast. You can find us out there on the different platforms. Please review and subscribe and rate and do all the different things that you do out there. We will be here again next week, same time, same place for another edition of the State of the Union podcast. And until then, and as always, size the day.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.